Hi guys, and welcome back to the Fentech HTML class. So for today's class, we are going to be diving in right into the HTML. So in this class, you're going to learn the elements. You will learn the elements to display text, links, images, lists and tables, container elements, structural elements, and so on. Now, even if you know the basics of HTML, I will encourage you to watch this video thoroughly because a lot of people don't use these elements the right way. So, let's jump into it. So, the first thing we're going to be doing for today is the head element. So earlier on I said that we use the head section to give the browser or search engine info about a web page. So first of all, we're going to start with this. That is our doc type HTML. Then the next thing we're going to move into is our HTML language. That's you need to add this so that the browser knows that your page is in English. So we're going to do it like this. En yeah. Next, we are going to go into the head element. Now, the next thing we're going to go into is the meta charset, which will be inside the head element. Yeah. Then we're going to be moving into the meta name. And the meta name, we're going to give it viewport. And then the content will be equals to let's give it width equals to device minus width initial scale equals to 1.0. Okay, then next we're going to move into is a title element, which is under the head element. Let's just keep it as Fentech. Yeah, then we're going to close our head element and we're going to open the body element. Now, okay, then we're going to keep a space, close it, and also close the HTML tag. Now, everything you see here, starting from this doc type to this HTML tag, this is what we call the basic HTML boilerplate, which means a basic HTML template. Now, since we are using Notepad, I have to write everything from scratch. But if you are using Visual Studios or Android Studios, once you just type this doc type or you type the HTML boiler, everything like this is going to come up. The only thing I edited in this place was the Fentech. Normally it's meant to be document that is meant to be there, that is for the boiler template. Now in the head section, we have the meta elements for giving info about this web page, that is this over here. The first element this year is for defining a character set. Now, what is a character set? Computers don't understand characters like ABC and so on. So they only understand numbers, which are always in binary formats like zeros and ones. So we will use a character set to mark a character to a numeric value. Now, the first character set that was designed was the ASCII, which stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. I repeat, the first character set that was designed was the ASCII, which stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. ASCII can only represent the characters in the English language, so it is very, very limited. Now, over the years, more character set has been created to represent more characters in international languages. The character set that we use most of the time these days is the UTF-8, which we have here, which represents almost all the characters in the world. Now back to our code. So with this meta element, we are defining the character sets used in this HTML document. Next, we have the meta element for configuring the viewport. The viewport is the visible area of a web page. So with this element, we are defining the initial width and zoom factor of the viewport. Now, every website must have at least these two meta elements. There are more meta elements. Example, we have, let me come over here and type it. We have the meta name. We have the meta name equals to keywords. Yeah, then content equals to HD. Okay, cap lock, sorry. HTML, CSS, use the cap lock. Now, in the past, these keywords were used heavily in search engine optimization. That's this over here, this meta name. It was used heavily in search engine optimization, but these days most search engines don't put too much weight on these keywords, but can still use them to define the keywords for this page. We have another meta element, meta name equals to description, content equals to no, we don't really need to put something there. Now this gives the description for this page, so we can type let's say all about Fentech. Maybe that's what you could write because it gives the description for the page. Now what we see in the content is what will appear on Google. For example, you search for apple, that written text that comes from the meta description with this meta element, we can give info about a web page. Next, we are going to talk about the elements you need to know for working with text. So goodbye to this. Like I said, this here is the HTML boilerplate down there. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to the text. Now let's talk about the paragraph, that is the P element, which we use for displaying some text. So under this body, I'm going to bring in my P elements, and I'll be like, I love teaching HTML. Okay, I think I'll go with an exclamation mark. Then I'm going to close my key element. Now imagine I want to emphasize the teaching. We can wrap it in an EM or emphasis element. For example, EM EM, yeah, so that's that. So before we save and check, let me just move on to an explanation. This EM element represents stress or emphasis of its contents. By default, browser shows emphasized elements in italics, but don't assume that whenever you want to display italic context, you should use the EM element, because the purpose of the EM element is to emphasize content in our HTML document, and this helps search engines extract important content in our documents. So anything to do with styling should be done in CSS. Okay, so sorry for the short break. So I've actually saved this document to html code.html, so it can tell our system that we need a browser to be able to open it. So I'll just press my good. Okay, so I've brought it back, and then Control S, and then we just go back, and then we open with our Google Chrome. So we just have to wait for that to load. Okay, so this is connected and we're back on. So you just have to wait for it to load and everything. So while we're waiting for it to load, let's go back to our code and continue. So in the past, we had an element called I, which is short for italics. So let me change this. So I and this. So I. Now, if we use this element, we get the same results as the emphasis. But first of all, let's move over. Okay, so here, when we had the EM element, as you can see, the teaching came in italics, that it's emphasized. Now, if I'm to save this page, Control S, and then I'm to reload, I will have the same thing because the I stands for italics. But this element, this I element, This I element over here is considered deprecated because HTML is not meant for styling. It should only be used for structuring content. So do not use the I element to display content as italics, okay? Now we have a similar element in HTML called strong. So now we'll have to change this I element strong. Yeah, the strong element represents strong importance, seriousness, or urgency for its content. It's kind of similar to the emphasis elements. So where you should use it really depends on your context or content. Now let's save, Ctrl S, load and see what we get. As you can see, it changed. So this is for the strong element. Now back to our code. By default, strong elements are displayed as bold, but as always, we can change the styling, but that is done in CSS. So as you can see, this is in bold. Yeah. Now in the past, we had another element called the B element, which is short for bold. So let's change this strong to B. B. Now, so whenever we wanted to make something bold, we would use this element. Once again, this element is considered deprecated because styling should be done in CSS and CSS alone and not in HTML. So do not use the B or I element. Now let's remove our B, or I could just save it and review to see if there will be any changes. It's the same as the strong element. So let's remove the B and go back to our EM. We save it, come back to our code, and it goes back to the italics. So this is all about text. So the next thing we're going to be going into is the heading. So I hope you enjoyed this particular class.